Okay, before we open it up for questions from the audience, I want to give you guys a chance to give any plugs for anything going on in your businesses now. And I don't know if you guys have any updates or want everyone to know some of the things and what's going on in Sterling and Fulton.
We're building a new brewery. I don't know if you've heard of that. That's sort of what's going on in Sterling. Here tonight. We have some beer releases coming up, so that on Facebook. I guess that's kind of our upcoming stuff. Abrasive and Smoke are coming, and I guess we'll be back here December 14th for the last class of beer school. So we'll see some of you then.
Should we talk about the growlers? Oh, that's right. We already mentioned we're opening for growlers Friday at 4 o'clock and Saturday at noon. Anything else?
Well, from a personal note, we're also releasing our fall seasonal, the Liberty. I'm pretty excited about that because it's campfire season and it's pretty beautiful. Come check it out on Friday, Saturday.
Okay, let's open it up to questions from the audience for a while.
Quick question, do you guys, since you guys are brewing out of Wisconsin, does that come with the barrel limit for selling growlers in Minnesota?
So by a show of hand, who is either an attorney or in law school in this? I would love to hear your opinions on the matter. I think it's an unresolved question. If you carefully read Minnesota statute, importers, which we are coming from Wisconsin and our production at Sand Creek, isn't necessarily counted towards your barrelage total. And when you look at the brewers' reports through the Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, which is kind of the federal reporting authority that we report to, we don't report that production on those forms as well. So in my opinion, I don't think that our contract production counts towards our total barrelage. That's my opinion. Some good attorneys.
Who else?
I guess that's a debate a lot of brewers have often is, we need to have far more liberalized rules. We think there'd be far more jobs, far more beer culture created if we could have something like those set of laws they have in Oregon. And I've been in meetings with some of the folks that have don't want to see those laws change, and those laws are really hard to change. And I think when you look at states that have kind of the models that brewers want, Wisconsin, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Michigan, some of those states, those laws have all been on the books for a long time. They didn't just change those laws 5-10 years ago. Like those laws were fairly liberal, in the 30s, 40s, and I guess from my perspective, it's sort of a fight the battles you think you can win. I don't think I'm up, personally for trying to change every beer law. I think we need to be realistic on what we can do. When I started Surly, we did not have a growler law that existed for breweries. It was just for brew pubs. And someone else who had nothing to do with that got that changed. So when we got into the business, like a year into it, all of a sudden we were able to sell growlers. So we never built a business model on that. It just kind of happened when we were there. So there are a lot of laws that can be changed to make things a lot more liberal, a lot more easier for breweries, but I honestly don't think they're all going to change. Right. True. That's true. But I guess maybe my perspective is I'm not going back to the Capitol to change another law this next year. Honestly, that's what I told folks. Because a lot of people are like, well, you're just doing this to do something else, because they're all scared to death of grocery stores getting liquor. That is their big thing, because they think it'll just kill a whole ton of liquor stores if grocery stores get beer and wine and liquor. And but that's always been my thing, is like, look, we're not looking to change all the laws. We're looking to change this one that we think is a reasonable change. And maybe Ryan and Jim want to get one back and tackle another set of laws. But it's tough, and it's a battle, and I know folks want to have more liberalized laws because they want to see more good beer available wherever you go, like it is in Oregon. But they're pretty big battles. So
I would echo Omar. I would say the only things that we would look to in the future to change are those limits that I wouldn't say are just, they apply to the brewing industry, but they're not brewing specific limits. They're more restrictions on small business. And in my mind, if you're not hurting someone, if you're not dealing under the table, if the government's putting a restriction on you in some type of arbitrary manner in which the business would otherwise regulate, I think the business should be able to regulate it and make the best decision for themselves. But at this point, I think last year's success was monumental, and at the same time, it's something that I think Fulton can be happy living with, and it doesn't need to necessarily continue to crack as
So understanding all of that, and understanding that the distributors are a choke point, and as a brewery, and understanding that the distributors are, and the wholesalers are also a legal component, do you think that there is a point at which a brewery should be required to distribute through a wholesaler, or should Minnesota do away with the wholesale system?
Well, they're currently, that law is in the books, and I don't know if you said that the distributors are an opponent or a component, but that law is in the books. A 25,000 barrel production, you have to use a distributor. So that law is there on the books.
So what's the 3,500?
That's a growler sale limit. So that's a different limit. So this year we're going to do 17,000 barrels. So the next year or two we'll go beyond that 25,000 barrel number, and we have to get a distributor. So, but the question of should the state get rid of that altogether and not have us require that? That would be a dismantling of the three-tier system, and
insofar as it's a restriction on small businesses, Jim's talking about.
Well, there's two ways to look at that, honestly. This is from someone that, that's in it. For example, there is a number, federal excise tax number, that if you're under it, you get a break on how much taxes you pay per keg of beer. And when you're above it, you pay more. So, when they wrote the law, they wrote it to be like a small brewer's exemption. If you got a break, it's when you're small. And then when you get close to that number, you call it, a reason not to grow, or something that keeps you from growing. And same thing with that small brewer's exemption to self-distribute your beer. It's been really advantageous for us at Surly, so we can keep, if we wanted to fight that, to say, well, that's not fair, we should be able to do it. That would be kind of changing the whole basis of. There's a couple states you can do that in. That is not a fight I would take on with the distributors, because that is sort of how the system works. And I don't think, Fulton signed on with the distributor from day one. It doesn't. I think the system is a little different than it was even when we started 5 years ago, and especially 10 years ago, from the stories I hear of the challenges brewers had getting distribution in the market. Well, now every distributor is out there clamoring for brands, fighting to get craft beer. I don't think that distributors are keeping us from getting our beer to market. I think they're certainly a part of the system, and I don't think any craft, or I can speak for myself, I don't think that system is going to fall apart, nor should it.
Yeah, and I would just add, like Omar said, from the very beginning, it was part of our business model to work with the distributor, and we're still exclusively with one distributor here in the metro area, and it's been probably one of the best decisions we've made for our business because they've been a partner for growing. We wanted to focus on brewing the beer and kind of building our brand, and the investment in the infrastructure, which were trucks and storage and things like that. For us, it just didn't make sense on that from where we started. So to have a good distributor as a partner has been a huge growth ally for us, and so we don't see that needing to, and definitely not needing to go away. And well, I think like Omar said in the past, it had been a barrier, especially 15 or 20 years ago before craft beer was as common as it was now. It was really, really hard for a brewer to start because they couldn't sell it themselves and no distributor was interested. And when you go out with a new kind of beer and they say, you want me to sell this for how much? Are you crazy? But now we don't have that obstacle, and distributors can be a very good thing. They have been for us. We haven't really had product issues with contract brewing. We've been really happy. It was, like I said, kind of a way into the business for us. It allowed us to get our foot in the door without having to outlay, the several $100,000 of building a brewery at that time, and kind of learn on a system that ended up being very similar to the one we eventually built here in Minneapolis. So it was a great learning curve in that way. I guess the challenge with contract brewing is you don't have as much ownership over the process. In Wisconsin, we can't be there every day, and ultimately, we don't get to have the final say in how much capacity is available to Fulton this month or this year or next year. So the benefit is, we don't have to necessarily own every single tank. If we are told that there's not enough capacity for us to brew on, and that's kind of the way it is. So it's both an enabler and a limiting factor.
Back there?
Surly, do you guys have any opinion on the recent increase in your darkness beer situation? Like, do you think any laws should be put in place there to protect you guys from distributors selling at a too high of a price? So maybe give you guys maybe not unhappy, but just not be show exactly what you think the price should be.
Okay, the question is whether or not there should be any kind of legal laws that would prevent distributors from marking up beers such as Darkness when they have the 750s.
Well, that's a good question.
I didn't mean to
Perhaps you should go to the internet to. I would definitely. I don't think the government in any way needs to get involved with this. I mean, let's. At the end of the day, we're talking about beer, not a cure for cancer. As much as we all love it, it's something that you can choose to buy or choose not to buy. Are we talking about Certix in particular, or just? No. I'm asking because there is a difference.
I'm not specific to anything.
Okay.
You want to address that?
Right. Well, just because, for example, with Certix, that was a store that we distribute to ourselves. So there was really the distributor didn't have anything come into play on that. We have some other markets that we sell that beer through a distributor, and they put a bigger markup on that than any other of our beers, or a bigger margin, I should say, than any other of our beers because there's not enough beer. So it's a highly sought after product, so they can mark it up more because they can. And I guess that's how the free market works. And I guess I feel two ways about it. One is one is it really pissed me off. That's kind of the one way to look at it. We know we can't make enough beer. We've made way. When we first brewed that beer and sold it in bottles 4 years ago, we sold 500 bottles at the brewery, and this year we're selling 18,000. So it's not like we're trying to keep it in low supply to jack up the price or anything. We're trying to make as much as we can, but the demand for the beers outstrips the supply. That's kind of how we get the prices that we can. And it's the guy that makes it. It's kind of annoying because you kind of feel like your customers, your big fans, are getting taken advantage of. We could sell that beer for way more money to liquor stores, but we don't because we want to keep it at the same price. We know there's enough demand out there, but at some point people feel like they're getting taken advantage of on the pricing side, and we've I think got a great relationship with our fans. We want to keep that going, and that's why we price it the same way, but there's not enough. So that's the one thing that kind of makes you angry, that you kind of feel like there's price gouging going on out there. And then on the other hand, back 15 years ago or so, my dad was a big wine fan. He every year, his birthday and Christmas were around the same time, I'd get him the Wine Spectator Wine of the Year. And it was $200. Didn't really matter. That wasn't the point. I wanted to get him that was my one gift for him for the year. And the magazine would come out, the price of that wine probably quadrupled. Maybe it was a $30 wine one day, and the next day it's a $100 wine. But that's what the market would bear. So that's kind of what it got priced at. And I didn't care when I bought that because it was a gift, and that was sort of the whole fun thing. So there's that's the other side of it is that, I couldn't believe it, but Certic sold 300 bottles of that beer at $37 in a day. Which, that's not kind of the way we price it or the way we want to see it get priced, but I guess a lot of people got it that probably wouldn't have gotten it normally because they had more money than time. I guess that's how supply and demand works. That's not how we want to see it, but that's the reality of it. And I certainly don't think anyone, I don't think that no one needs to get involved in setting the prices on that stuff, because then that leads to a whole bunch of other stuff. But it'll certainly make us re-examine what we're going to do in the future with a beer like that, and kind of how we sell it, because we want to try and get it to as many people as we can, and hopefully liquor stores that have good relationships with their customers realize that and sell it at a fair price and not just what the market will bear.
First of all, if there's an advocacy organization, would that be pretty popular? Okay. More importantly, has anyone engaged in an economic impact study about craft brewing and seen really what the economic impact is and how to use that then to push policy changes?
To my knowledge, nobody has. Certainly not something I've been staying up late to do. No offense. I think actually that is a great idea, and as the pint law was coming about, I tried to kind of back into some figures as to what it would mean to the state's economy, and quickly realized it was probably over my head, at least in terms of how much research it would take. And it's something that I think actually probably wouldn't be that much to do, given or that impossible to do, given the right amount of time to undertake the study. And I think it could be powerful to bring to. If there was legislation being pushed for, that would be a very powerful supporting leg, I think.
Are you volunteering?
No, we certainly have not done that. The Minnesota Brewers Guild, and I think as that organization also grows up along with the craft beer community industry, I think that's something deal has been pretty much just focused on running festivals, but now we've got hopefully a little more time, a little more energy, just to start working on some of those things so we can quantify that. You go to the Capitol and say, look at the job, look at the tax. There's a lot. Beer pays a lot of taxes. And it's at our level of the excise side of things, and here at the bar. And, so we certainly want to do that, but that's one of those things that's not fun.
Just a footnote on that, there actually is a consumer advocacy group as related to beer here in Minnesota called the Minnesota Beer Activists, and Andrew, if you're still here, Andrew in the back there with the nice Movember mustache, has spearheaded that group, and they've been very active as we were getting the pint law passed, getting people out, because actually that was one of the big I think kind of ahas to the Senate committee that first day when we all testified, and the room was absolutely packed, and Andrew was there and a number of other people that may or may not have been affiliated with the group, but for them to see how passionate people were about the beer scene here kind of brought it to life. 'Cause they see people come and testify every day, but when you have this eclectic group that we're a part of kind of show up in full force to speak with passion, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, so my question has to do with beer consumers. Beer's been kind of ubiquitous. I think if you start consuming alcohol, you're going to drink beer at some point. But I don't know, that's not a very nuanced view though. So I want to ask you if you have some information about the segments, if there's as many people drinking beer as there could be, if there's an effort to grow the number of beer drinkers, stuff like that.
Boy, we make an effort 40 barrels at a time to increase the number of drinkers. What segments? Maybe the guild has.
No, I don't think we do. That's, I guess, where a lot of where the craft section is at. We're worried. We're really focused on production. We're not focused on sales. So I don't. We don't do a lot of demographic analysis. We don't do a lot of analysis. Honestly, I'm sure that information's out there, but I guess more people could always be drinking beer. But no, I can't say. I'm sure the big guys have stuff like that. They're always trying to figure out how to do it, but I don't think there's a lot of information. Like the Brewers Association at beertown.org. That's sort of the umbrella group that represents craft brewers. I think they have a lot more of that data. And certainly we figure out what our demo is when we see who's there drinking our free beer at a tour.
I think just last note on that. I mean, beertown.org has some great kind of overall industry views, and the beer, at least the quantity of beer in the U.S. being consumed is actually declining every year, and you can see that we're all pretty alarmed by that. Not really, because the craft segment is growing in double digits every year, and we have the luxury of being less than 5% of the overall beer consumption, and we're not the 95% that's declining. So we don't really have to kind of try and divide up the market to what small pieces are left, because we have such a big opportunity. And honestly, it's more about putting beer in the tanks rather than trying to figure out where is that 99th consumer at.
So I'm interested in policy at a slightly smaller level. Both of the companies up here have recently either have gone through or are going through a process of selecting specific sites for different types of operations. And I'm curious to know what sort of factors you guys have looked at and are looking at when you're trying to decide where to do stuff.
Well, I think we're lucky because Omar said he was going to. The question was about the process of both of our companies either have selected or are going to select a new site for a brewery, and what is the process of determining where to do that. And Omar mentioned to me earlier that he was going to announce where it is tonight. Okay, maybe that was tomorrow.
I guess this has been a fun talk tonight. No, we have, how to find a spot. it's been a challenge. It's been a lot slower and longer than I've thought. I guess that's how these things go. For us, the big challenge is that as we started working with a group. I went through the process myself, working with some folks in the city or some other people to bring us ideas of where to find a site, and looked at it and came up with a spot I thought might work, and that's what brought on a group to help us sort of do all of that same stuff, but do it better. Because I had done it before. There's a lot that I don't know. Kind of get these big sites, and you're working with the city, and you're working with a number of state organizations due to pollution, due to all kind of stuff. It gets it's way over my head. So kind of taking a step back, started over, looking at everything again. And for us, the number one biggest issue is the size of the space. And as we've gone on in this process, I think I first said, about a year ago when we announced back in February or March that it was going to be like a 5 or 6 acre spot. And now it's probably an 8 to 10 acre spot. And there's not a lot of those areas available in the metro or in the cities, really. So that's been a big part of it, is just trying to find something that big. And then from there, it's really trying to figure out what makes one site work versus another. And, there's amenities of, who wouldn't want to be on the river? You look at Northeast Minneapolis, the Grainbelt facility is still there. That's where Blix used to be. Breweries seem to be drawn towards the water, towards rivers. But that's just one piece of it, that amenity of, kind of what's the area like, what's the attraction. And then, for us, the big issues are, for me, I guess, the big issues are kind of transit related. We'd like it to be a spot people can get to by car, which is pretty much anywhere. But the other two big ones are by some other form of transit and by bike, because I think we're a brewery. People do actually drink at some of our events, and we'd like to have as many ways for those folks to get back home without driving as possible. And that's been one of the tough things about Brooklyn Center. They've been great to us, but there's nowhere to get there. The buses, I'm sure some folks here have been out to the brewery. There are no buses that run on Saturday out there. You have to walk a mile to get to a bus, and that's just not going to happen. So we like to be, obviously you want to be next to the LRT, like some folks here. Or you like to be, right by a pretty major bus line or a future streetcar line or something like that. To me, that's pretty important. And I guess the other issue is we'd like to be where the people are at. So we've had some very nice proposals for Surly Brewing in some areas that would probably be great, and there'd be a lot of room and they're the right price. But I'm from the city, and this is kind of where we sell Surly in some of the surrounding suburbs and exurbs. But this is really where the people drink all the beer, is kind of in the core of the city. So that's kind of where we've focused most of our efforts.
Yeah, Ryan touched on it before, but I wish that we had gone through some of those processes, because when Fulton found its brewery,
You have an awful spot.
yeah, no, that's not at all what I'm saying, but
You know you're gonna have a bar when you open?
no, thank you. Surly Bill, yes, to clarify. But we were just about to sign a lease in a 60,000 square foot building. We were going to be
Not for the whole building.
yeah, very clear. Very clear. Thank you, Rob. It was 2,000 square feet of it, and Ryan touched on kind of those separation issues in multi-tenant buildings, and it was a great location. It was where the people were. There was transit and all that. We were to sign it on a Monday, and on a Sunday night, a friend of a friend of a friend who had drank some beer, talked to a guy, and called Ryan and said, "Hey, I've got this open space. I like your beer. I love breweries. Why don't you come down and take a look at it?" So we hopped on our bikes. We went down the Cedar Lake Trail. We're looking at the MapQuest, and we weren't really familiar with where we were going. But as we got closer and closer, we liked it more and more and more. And when we ended up pulling into to, at that time, it was a dirt lot. The landlord wasn't there to open the door, so we hopped up on our loading dock and we turned around, and we were in the shadow of Target Field, and the skyline was right in front of us. And I don't think we thought 1 minute about what equipment was going in, or the pollution, or any of those things. We just thought, one of the goals for Fulton was to have a brewery in Minneapolis, and what was more Minneapolis than kind of being right downtown. So we stumbled into our location, and it's been. We're not open yet, so I'll tell you how it's going to go. Come see us.
So the question was about what kind of politicians? No, the question is what's keeping us from getting to where some other states are. I think to sum it up. And I remember I was meeting with a guy that was in the distribution business. They're one of their, I guess, sort of organizing groups. They're umbrella organization in the state. And I was with a brew pub guy, and we were there to talk to him about this proposed idea to change the law. This was a few years back. A failed attempt to make some changes. And the guy I was with said, the laws here are really, we've got a lot of blue laws here. We're behind the curve. There's a lot of things you can't do here. You look at these states like, name them, Colorado, Oregon, yada, yada, yada. A lot better beer laws. It'd be better for you guys. You'd have more beer to sell. And I remember the guy said, well, that's one way to look at it. Or you can say that we're ahead of the curve of about half the states. We're kind of in the middle. And I remember thinking, well, that is a very good argument. And that's true. There's a lot of states, like the Dakotas. There aren't a lot of people there. There aren't a lot of breweries there either. The laws are not health. And you kind of look around the country, and there are a lot of states that have some pretty crummy beer laws. And there's, you look at the distribution side is one part of it, and the retailers as another part of it, and the munis, municipal beverage stores, that's another very powerful lobby. Those three oftentimes work together and stop things from happening. And, throughout our whole, as far as the politicians go, honestly, I learned a lot about politics this year, and it's, they're, the folks in power, they have a lot of people talking to them, and, when, we go and tell them their story, they hear that, when the opposition tells them their take on our story, it's their take, and the politicians got to sit there in the middle and figure out how to vote on this arcane three-tier law system. Most of especially the freshman folks, they've never heard of the three-tier system. You guys know way more about the three-tier system than 99% of the people out there. It's just not something you talk about. So they're trying to figure this stuff out, and there's no easy answers. The opposition tells them all the bad things that are going to happen, and how do they know? Because they're not in the business. It was best summed up. I really had a hard time meeting with the opposition. They really didn't want to talk to us. That's kind of, I guess, how politics works. It's kind of about the votes and about power. And in the past, they really don't compromise because they don't need to, because that's what you do when you win. And I went and talked to someone that was on the board at the MLBA, one of the major groups that opposed our bill, and one of our biggest customers. And I went and talked to her and said, hey, we're not trying to do all this stuff you hear about, we're willing to talk and all this stuff. And she said, Omar, we talked for a while, and she said, Omar, at the end of the day, we don't like change. She said, we've been doing this, my family's been doing this for over 50 years. This is a pretty good business for us, and we don't like people messing with it. And I think at the end of the day, that's the real, that doesn't play very well in the Capitol, so you don't want change. But I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's about. I think, like I always say, do you see a lot of liquor stores that close? How many can you name outside of like someone that opens a boutique wine store and you find out, yeah, you gotta sell beer, you gotta sell something. Outside of those, they don't close. You know, I mean, bars close, of course, restaurants close because there's been a lot of other pieces to it, but they don't like to see things change because it works pretty well. You know, there was an article in the paper a while ago about Minnesota or Minneapolis doesn't have as many liquor licenses as it would probably warrant. I think Wisconsin has twice as many retail outlets per capita as Minnesota does. So if you're in the business, why would you want to see a change? And I really think at the end of the day, that's the main issue. It's that, and it's that whole grocery store thing. Like, a lot of folks are worried that if we get off sale, if we're able to sell pints of, or sell beer to go, that the next thing that's going to happen is grocery stores are going to get it. Or if liquor stores can sell stuff on Sundays, then the grocery stores will complain that we can sell 32 on Sundays, now we can't. Now you've taken our advantage away, so you got to give us beer and wine in grocery stores. Like, that is the big elephant that drives a lot of stuff, is that the grocery store thing. So, kind of a long answer, but there's kind of a lot to it, and those are some pretty big issues that are going.
One of the parts on your question that I think is worth noting is who to call. And there are lots of things that we can talk about changing laws here in Minnesota and what's the future, but one that I want everybody to leave here tonight as a takeaway is the federal excise tax on beer. Omar talked about it a little bit earlier, and that 60,000 total barrelage production for each barrel of beer, roughly 2 kegs, a brewer pays $7 per barrel. And we're working hard, other brewers across the country are working hard to lower that. And some of the proposed reductions, Omar could probably talk a little more, I think you were out in Washington earlier this spring, but if those reductions were in fact to be made law and lowered that small brewers excise tax at the barrelage that Surly's doing, at the barrelage that Fulton intends to do and hopes to do, I mean, that's a new employee. So if anybody's ever wanted to work in the brewing industry or that's your calling right there. I mean, it'd be really an easy decision for us, and it's something that has the potential to change. If you want to call somebody, call on the federal side, call your representative, call your senator, and that's a difference you can make right now.
Yeah, questions about, if we build a new brewery, how's that going to change availability? If it doesn't change availability, we're really in a bad spot. We'd certainly, one of the goals is to have enough beer for the marketplace. We'd certainly like to make enough. It's an interesting scenario with some of the like Darkness you look around, Dark Lord and Brewery, some of their beers, like it's getting to be, some beers are getting out there to be like wine as far as the cost that they're going for, and I guess one of the challenges of that is, some of those bigger beers take a lot more time to brew. They're like folks always say, why don't you just brew more of it? Like it seems like it's a simple answer, but it just doesn't quite work that way, because every time we brew Darkness, we're not brewing 3 or 4 batches of Furious because the amount of time it takes in the tanks. And the reality is that they're just, it's pretty difficult to make enough of some of those specialty beers, especially those bigger beers that take more time to brew to make enough of it, because when we brewed that beer in 2006 for the first time, Todd said, I want to brew Russian Imperial Stout. Have 10 barrels of it, which is 20 kegs. And we're saying, how the hell am I going to sell 20 kegs of this beer in this city? And now it's a little, the problem's the opposite. But that, I guess that speaks to the vitality and health of the craft beer industry and scene, and we keep trying to brew more, but you don't want to brew so much of it that, or you want to brew it, you don't want to just like, well, let's keep dumbing it down or shortening the cycle of the time or change the beer to make more of it just to make more of it. So I guess that's always one of those balancing acts that we've got to deal with, and every craft brewer, a lot of craft brewers out there, their issue is, like I said, not sales, it is production. How do they make enough? And that's, I think, one of the bigger challenges we have as an industry in our business. And so we're building new breweries, so there's not much more we can do than that.
So while progress was being made in Minnesota this year, Wisconsin actually got more restricted. And though we don't have the Miller Coors in Minnesota, what's out there that I know not that perhaps is in imminent danger, but what's out there that somebody might want to take away, and who is that?
Well, that's a good question. And that's, I guess, something that we're always trying to keep an eye on what's going on. And I think the consolidation of Miller Coors and Anheuser-Busch or InBev is worrisome to the craft brewery. Those guys would love to see that second tier of the distributors go away. That'd be great, because for them it just costs them money. Because it'd be far easier for them just to ship beer to Costco and such. And honestly, that's like a big... we can talk about how distributors are bad, but that's one of the big worries is that if some of these laws change, and this is my opinion, some of these laws change, they're going to cut the distributors out. It's not going to be good for craft brewers if all of a sudden the distributors are gone, and it's just going to be, I would think, run by Miller Coors and InBev, because the prices are going to drop so much, there's nothing we can do to compete against them. Because they're getting into craft beer. They own Goose Island, and there's a lot more Goose Island right now, and they're brewing good beer at Goose Island. That's not the issue that they've changed some of those beers, but it's owned by a company that I think has a little different focus than what we do out here. And to me, that's a big worry. I know a lot of craft beer fans say, well, I don't care who owns it, I just care if it's good or not, and that's certainly a valid point. But I think from our side, like personally, I'm worried that when the big guys like that go in and corner all the market on the hops because they're big enough and they have enough money to do it, that kind of frightens me. So I think we're going to see some interesting things in the next few years in the craft beer business on who else is getting into it. Got some friends at Terrapin, and I guess they got money from a company that is an investment arm of Miller Coors. They just converted that loan into equity, so they now own a bunch of Terrapin. So you're going to see a lot more things like that. The craft beer business is going to get bigger and going to get a lot more. It's going to get a lot more businessy, and hopefully it won't get less crafty. But that's kind of my fear.
Yeah, we have time. Yeah, you got time. Or not. For any of you guys, or pro mark for the guild, do any of the breweries explored like doing a work sale type thing, like a partner company that would be like a Granite City type thing where you they ferment on premise, so there's their own little brew pub, but you kind of get around the growler sale, so they could be selling the Surly Ward and Surly beer, but they could sell growlers, but they're not technically the same company, so it kind of gets around a few.
Yeah, I think if I can summarize the question of selling wort like Granite City to other bars or restaurants that would then ferment it and sell it, so that Surly could potentially sell growlers, or Fulton went over the growler limit, they could sell beers. It's an interesting question. One of my least favorite words in some of the alcohol laws are indirectly and ownership. And so for Fulton, if we were over that limit and then decided that what we wanted to do was open up some smaller Granite City-esque type of places and sell the beer and have it fermented and sell growlers, we couldn't have an ownership interest in that and the brewery. So it'd be a great way to get the beer out there, but there's so many things that can go on in that second stage of the brewing process, the fermentation, and even if beyond that, just how the beer is being handled, that to license a product potentially or do something kind of as you described, just takes our control and our craft out of our beer. And although it's an interesting idea, maybe not in the future.
Yeah, I would say we have enough challenges controlling the QC and all the issues at the brewery. To send it somewhere else just means it's not ours anymore. So I don't think that's something we consider doing.
All right. Well, we really appreciate all you guys coming out. Wonderful, wonderful questions. Can we have a round of applause, please? I also want to thank Rick from Republic, who's been a great partner in helping us set this up. Drink lots of beer from his bottle because he's been a great, great partner for us. Also, Northern Brewery does have some pint glasses on your way out. If you get a minute, stop by, pick one up. And again, thank you all so much for coming out to our event. Again, one more round of applause for everybody here.